the perfect angle. And right in the center of that perfect angle was Polaris, the North Star. Hi, everybody. My name is Heather, and I am going to attempt to show you how the ancient Irish alphabet, the Ogham views, translates into modern day mathematics. We're going to start by looking at the letters themselves. I'm going to be using my handwritten notes here, and I'm going to have them off on one of the sides to illustrate for you. So the Ogham alphabet is a series of linear marks, vertical linear marks that have 4 segments broken into 5 um, lines apiece. Each one has a single, a double, a triple, a quadruple, and a quintuplet here, right? That represent a letter, a sound, and they're known as the Viking or the Celtic tree runes. Viking, we'll get into that in a minute. I'm getting ahead of myself here. They're known as the Celtic tree runes, and they're an almost illegible alphabet that has been carved into stone onto the edges and sides of stone since we're not exactly sure when. It showed up about the 4th, 5th century in Ireland and England, but mostly Ireland, Scotland, right? And it was used to mark boundary points. Generally, it would have a boundary point and it would say someone's name, and it would say like, this is the area of the tribe of so and so, son of so and so. And it was a very difficult language to read, but the Irish monks were required to. They found a book in the 13th century called the Book of Ballymote that had the Ogham tracts written in it, all of the different versions of Ogham that had to be memorized by the clergy, right? The Irish clergy, they had to, and the monks had to keep translating these tracts over and over, and they would get very, very frustrated. There was even one called the Ogham of Uproar and Anger. It was like track number 25 or 35, I can't remember, because of the frustration caused by anyone trying to use it as a written language, which is why I thought maybe it isn't. Maybe that's not quite what it is. And the more I looked at it and the more I dove into the realms of maybe what ifs, sparkling light started to come through, like literally in some cases. Sounds started to come through. It is an alphabet. They do make sounds. So what is it? What was it actually used for? How old is it? Well, the Fortress of Loo posted an amazing video this month, earlier this month. I'm making this video in May 2026, called The Origins of Ogham, and it was the ancient Irish Celtic script. It was released on Beltane, May 1st. And he asks the questions like, how old is it? And because it's on stone, it's really hard to carbon date it, because we can't carbon date stone. So what Fortress of Loo did was he went through it and looked at it linguistically. How were the spellings used? What were the terms used? Where did those terms come from? Like, who used the spelling? There comes in the Viking. There was a lot of Viking incursion happening in Northern Ireland and throughout the region at the time, and there was a lot of language mixing. I have a whole workup and study that I did several years ago on the Futhark runes, younger and older Futhark, and how they might correlate. And later on, we're going to bring these two together. Like later on down the road, we're going to bring these two alphabets together and talk about what they could potentially be in terms of science, in terms of ancient understanding, mathematics, historically. And that's been very difficult to do because most of the Ogham inscriptions that we found are in stone. And again, we can't carbon date stone. So how old were they? So I'll link the Fortress of Loo video under here so that you guys can check it out. But he does make some interesting correlations to Proto-Celtic language, which was difficult. It was difficult to write in the Middle Ages, right? So because they didn't have the same sounds. So there was a letter H and a letter P, and they were changed and mixed, right? When we think of the word thorough, when we think of the words, anything with a letter H that's silent, hour maybe, or well, we say we don't use that H in America. but take it how it resonates. It's the sound that doesn't exist anymore, but still exists in the spelling. And where did that come from? And that's where some of the Viking rune scripts come in, because if it's like the SC word, like scythe or scissor, those words tend to come from the old Nordic traditions, right? So like linguistic traditions. So it's a poignant chronological marker in what words were inscribed, what names were inscribed, because of the spelling of the word. So he really figured a lot of this out, and he talks to us about how the three segments were the three classes of the Irish society at that time, which we already knew, right? If you study the tree runes, I mean, that's knowledge that is known, that they were the chieftain trees, the peasant trees, and the shrub trees. And there were that 888. So there were 24 of them. We're going to talk about 20 letters. There are an extra 5 letters, which were an addendum added to the alphabet afterwards. They're called the four feta. Those have different functions mathematically in the alphabet, in the language that we're speaking, right? And it's only to be understood by learned people. This language could only be understood, or this alphabet could only be understood by learned people, which means that it isn't something that can just be taken off the cuff, right? Like take it as it looks to you, the phonetic sounds, how we use our Latin letters to create the language that we're speaking and communicating today. These are saying that if you learn about them, there's a lot more to it. It's encouraging that it's only to be understood by maybe the chieftain societies, maybe the people who are privileged enough. And that is power is knowledge, knowledge is power, that kind of a thing. And it was known even then, right? That those who knew how to understand these things knew what to do with them. So let's go back to some of this here. When I was looking at these and I was trying to go through them, I decided to make a wheel. And this wheel is the alphabet itself, the calendrical dates that go with it, the phonetic alphabet, right? The alphabet, the Latin alphabet equivalent to the sound that these letters would make. Their what direction they're going. That's important. Are they going up and outward? Are they going down? Are they going to the right? Are they going to the left? Because the entire alphabet is lines going in a direction. It's interacting with this center staff here. So some of each letter has a directional marker. Each letter has, which is the same as the element that it represents. So white is Nufra, that's the spirit. Blue is water, green is earth, air is yellow, fire is red, and fire red south, air yellow east, water blue west, earth green north, spirit white center. And then these are the directions that the letters themselves are making. And then each one is part of a season, right? So that's what we know, and that's very well agreed upon. So I started to look at them in this idea. I made a chart of which direction they went and what time of year they were, which lunation, which moon cycle they were associated with. Really got into the nitty gritty of all of that, and started to see waves, started to see cycles, started to see circles and spirals, right? And these are things that we see quite often in ancient Irish petroglyphs, in Pictish petroglyphs from Scotland. So I was trying to equivocate them to maybe a current flow, which direction they're going, since directional markers are so important. And eventually I broke it down. So here's the directions that things are going. The counter rotating currents, like a Birkeland current, like DNA, the helix, right? There's this idea of these spirals that build around themselves. And if we look at a spiral like this, when we turn it sideways, we could be looking at a whole orb, a whole spherical shape. We could be looking at an up and down wave. We could be looking at all kinds of different things that from a topical standpoint look flat and even and just look like a bunch of concentric rings. So there has to be more to this, right? I know. how do they interact with each other? It really got into the ideas of, like velocity and how much force per the angle, because there's a electromotive induction, right? For a 90-degree angles, anywhere between 0 and 90 degrees, there is a induction of flux within a field. It's this interaction between the magnetic field plane, right? Say that's the magnetic field plane here, and then here is a wavefront perpendicular, an axis perpendicular to that plane. If there is interaction between here and here, this spot and this spot up here, that 90-degree angle, a certain amount of power is induced, right? Electric induction. Things move from that spark, that flux between the flat plane here and the perpendicular axis here. And the amount of charge induced is indicative of or determined by the angle at which that wave front moves. All right. And that we calculate these things through trigonometry, through cosine, sine, I can't even talk right now. Tangents, right? And the secant that comes out of that, the exterior space, all circles, all triangles. When we look at Celtic art, especially ancient Neolithic Celtic art, it's spirals, it's triangles, it's chevrons, right? And I've done extensive work in my book, Ancient Irish, Lagrange Ancient Irish Sciences, about how these petroglyphs, especially around the bottom of Noath and Newgrange, are charts to teach trigonometry, to teach ancient calculus, to teach ancient cosmology and physics. Okay, so that is here. Right now we're talking about their alphabet. How did that translate? And so we're working at like how much charge is induced by the angle at which it is the flux occurs, right? Go through this and do a lot of circle study here. How are angles and vectors interacting within a circle, right? And that's all trig. And we know that in modern math. We learned that in high school, right? So, pardon me, I'm getting there. So there's several ways that the Ogham is written. It's written in a circular formation, it's written in a square formation, and it's written in one that's a circle with a bunch of little C's. All of this is relevant. All of this is important. We come to a space where we are understanding that they each have a position in that sine wave function. And so we start to break it down as to what each of the symbols means in relation to a gridded, a charted, a plotted graph. Right. And what waves do they create? So here is the assignment of each of the letters in the unit circle, and how they what their function is here at each of the degrees. It is 20 18-degree segments broken into 4 acme, 4 groups of 5. Like I said, each one has a single, a double, a triple, a quadruple, and a quintuplet here. And then it begins again. Each of the cycles, it goes this way, it goes that way, it goes down, or it goes across, right? There's diagonals, there's up, down, diagonals, or across. And the across are the vowels. I hope this is still interesting. Yeah, the clothes. So I started working with the square window. It's called like the Rochbau window. That could be the other one. Not I'll write it on the side here. But each of the acme of the alphabet goes around each of these concentric squares here. And their letters are placed at different points along the edges of each of the squares. So I thought, well, what would happen if we just followed them around? What shapes would they make within that square? And it becomes this spiraling shape, right? So here's like a clean one here of where each of the acme, and then where each of the fused, each of the Ogham sits within those lines. And then that is the interaction of those lines within those spaces. That started getting really weird. So I thought, okay, so we decided to go ahead and graph that sine wave. Okay, graph that unit circle, put it into a wheel perspective and see what that looks like. Okay, that's all very, very interesting. Here it is again. So it's developing quite nicely, right? Now I'm looking at the aspecta figura, the Ptolemaic Tetratablio, Basil, 1533, Hervagaius. Sorry, Latin text by Plato of Tripoli. My handwriting is horrible because I just scribbled it, but this is basically Euclidean geometry, right? These are the straight lines and the angles and how all of those angles interact with each other within 30-degree segments in a wheel. 30 degrees is 12 segments in the 360-degree wheel. That's 12 hours in a clock phase. That's 12 lunations. If you miss that one, which they tend to, right? For the months, 12 months, 12 zodiacal signs, right? And it's because it's a real easy number to break down and divide, and it goes into all these spaces really cleanly. Pi, all of those, phi, all of those things that we hear about, the golden ratio, all of those, they fit nicely within this formulaic aspect of 12 around 360 with 30-degree segments. It's very, very clean. It's very, very precise. And it's carried out throughout the ages. So here I made it in color. So it was a little bit more legible, a little more readable. So I decided to do that with the Ogham, right? And again, there's 20 instead of 12. And these are all of the possible Euclidean angles that could apply, the geometries within their interactions with each other in the same way that geometers have handled it for thousands of years. And my argument might be that this predates that. So there are some congruencies, there are some things that followed through completely. Some of them don't line up exactly the same. And my argument for that is that this probably predates that this is a different way of looking at things. It's a different number system. I mean, look back to, like it was like the ancient Sumerians and the Plimpton stone, where it showed that they were able to do trigonometry, that they were able to use it to chart the stars in the sky and calculate distances and time and all kinds of things, building, architecture, all kinds of things because of the math that they were able to achieve. So we know that the ancient mind was sophisticated enough to come up with these types of things, and that it isn't an isolated incident in modernity or even in a specific place, right? It was happening all over the world. And this might be some of the very oldest mathematical understandings of the physics and cosmology of nature that humans have developed. And I say that loosely, and at the same time I'm pretty confident in saying it. But also, you know, we're all learning something new every day. Here are all of the angle points coming from one vector, all the vectors coming from one point, right? How they all kind of touch each other and reach for those spaces. And I was trying to find patterns. I was trying to find, like, how does this look on each side of this wheel? What are they doing? How are they interacting with each other? And so now here's where we start to get into the nitty gritty, and the thing that I really, really want to show you. I've made other videos about how the Ogham fit into the unit circle. And I even made a video about how I talked to AI about it, and AI was wrong. And I had to recalculate all kinds of stuff because of the way that AI worked it, and I had to correct it. So don't rely on them. I'm full transparency with you. I did try it. I wanted to see what it was about. We're going into the new age of technology, whether you agree with it or you don't. It's kind of, whether you believe in AI or you don't, AI is real and it exists. And so as someone who's studying the ancient tech, it would be remiss of me to not try to plug it into the newest tech available in the present day and see what happened there. And the new tech didn't understand it. And that's one of the things about this alphabet too, that it can't be put into a program like Python or any of the other programming software because of the way that the linear text is written. It's vertically written with these hash marks. It's illegible to a lot of computer programs as a translatable language. So it isn't something that AI is familiar with. It was referencing my own work. So while I did try it, and I do recommend trying things, looking at things, not shying away from advancement. At the same time, I do have my skepticism too. As an artist, I completely understand the arguments there. And so I just want to let you know that the things I'm showing you are my drawings, that the math that the AI did was wrong. I made whole videos about that. This came from the human mind, my human mind. And I just want to make that clear, that like a disclaimer on all of this. Okay. Because I think that it gets a little iffy nowadays. Like, what are we learning? What got told from where? And so just know that this is the brainchild of a human, worked very hard. No one else is going to tell you this. The internet didn't even understand what I was saying. And that's an okay and beautiful thing. There's originality here, and which is why you might also be skeptical of it. But what I'm about to show you hopefully solidifies your belief in this, not just your belief, because it's here whether you believe in it or not, right? So like so many things are, if it helps you understand and believe that we as humans have been capable of these things for quite a long time, and how does that help us in our modern day, right? So some of the most common words used in Ogham inscriptions or the words Mackie and the words McCoy. And McCoy, MUCOI, means the tribe of, or the sect of. Mackie, MAQI, means the son of. So you would say like a name, son of the tribe of the name of the tribe. And that would be what was written on the Ogham stone as the marker. So I decided to try to graph the words into a circle, into a unit circle here. So this is the word Mackie. All right. And this is the word McCoy. And this is the most famous Ogham stone inscription, that like world famous. And it says, pardon my pronunciation, Biveadanis Maki Mukoi Kunalavali, which means Biveadanis, son of the tribe of the Kavana Lee. And this is what it looks like in a waveform. All right, so this starts getting really, really weird when I started putting in some of the most common words, and I got the words off of Wiki. So if you guys want to give me other words to use, other words to try this with, if you want to try them yourself, let me know. I'm very, very curious. Let's communicate on this, because what I'm about to show you gets really strange, right? So the word AVI, AVI, means descendant. In modern Irish, it's way. Now, I have really bad pronunciation, and I admit that, and I apologize. Again, any help there I would be grateful. But the word AV, descendant, it starts here, and it goes to here, and it comes back down to here. That's 180, that's 36, and that's 252, and it creates a 72-degree wedge. Do you see that? 72 degrees is almost the entire quadrant. Almost. There's this little section left right there. We'll get to that later. We'll discuss that, but one thing at a time here. The 90-degree segment, ANM, which means name, and it is the whole 90 degrees. The whole 90 degrees. So to have one that's the descendant of, it's a little bit smaller. It's a little bit smaller. It doesn't really fill up the whole gap. And this little wedge here is important, right? And then this one fills up the entire wedge, and it also starts at 72. So this one is 72 degrees. It starts at 36. This one is 90 degrees and it starts at 72. Now we have Celi, Celi, and it's a follower or devotee. It's also one of the most common Irish names. Now, this one gets interesting. If we follow the arrows down, it follows in a descending pattern here. Follows down in a descending pattern here. Koi, K-O-I. All right, now K could be coal, this letter right up here, which is also the letter for C. But what makes sense is if the K is actually code, like part of those forfeta that came later, right? And what happens is it code, the symbol for code looks like inverse pressure, right? It looks like 2 points pushing in on another point. And that word means here is. It's right here. It's right here. Do you see that? It's right here. These waveforms are describing the word that they mean. In Irish and even in Old Norse language, they would use things called kennings in language. Kennings are poems, like short 2-word poems or 3-word poems that describe what the thing is in a poetic way. So like Ogham is point seam, which makes sense when you look at it. It kind of looks like stitches, doesn't it? It looks like stitches, point seam, and it's pointing things together. It's seaming things together. It's bringing these things from both sides of this line. So that is a descriptive, a poetic descriptor to name something. And that's how they often did it. So that makes it really interesting when this word follower, or descendant, and this word means the self, and this word means or the self and the name, right? All of those are very, very strange. Gets even weirder. We're going to talk about Mackie real quick. Mackie is the son of, and it looks like the sun, like this is the small one and this one is the closed one and this one is the one that's open, right? And then this is McCoy, which is the tribe of which they came from, right? This is nephew. It looks like a lightning bolt, but when you actually look at it, this is a fractal of this. So the nephew, later on that word is translated to mean champion. And then we have right here, we have Mackie and McCoy, the son of the tribe of, together sitting in this space. Now, while they're beautiful, they kind of look familiar at the same time. I took Mackie and I put it on a like a polar circumference chart to be able to find the North Star. Sorry, I'm trying to like bring that light back up, but to try to find the North Star from the astronomical there it goes, the Astronomical Association, to show how you can tell where the Northern Star is, the polar star, by where you're standing on the planet, and how you can kind of figure out where you are on the planet according to your angle of the Northern Star. And what I found was that when I put this over that image, the angle was the same of the galactic ecliptic, right? The galactic plane, the planetary ecliptic, and the Earth's tilt all lined up to this. It got even weirder when I reflected it, when I took this image and flipped it over on top of it, and it became the perfect angle. And right in the center of that perfect angle was Polaris, the North Star, right here. Why is it upside down? Why am I doing these backwards? There's a couple of reasons for that. Traditional Newtonian telescopes are reflective mirrors. They reflect and then they reflect and then they reflect and then they reflect. And what you wind up seeing is an upside down image, which is perfectly fine in astronomy because there is no up in space. It's just a matter of like the orientation of them to in relation to each other. Where's the star in relation to that star in relation to that star? And now you've got an orientation and you can figure out where you are from there. which is also what happens when we use the camera obscura effect. A small lens is placed it to allow the light into a dark space, and the light that comes through that little lens projects what's happening on the outside into the dark space, but it's upside down. So if you go back to my videos, my original video, it's complexicated. It talks about how the light gets bounced down these hallways, down off of these stones within these cairns to create a reflective image in the back on the cauldron of water so that they could see whether that have been aurora, whether that have been weather patterns, whether that have been radio frequencies, whether that have been stars. The image most likely would have been completely upside down. It would have been a reflection of what was actually happening in the exterior. And that's how these are translating. Here we have kuna. Kuna is one of the most common prefixes to names in the Ogham inscriptions. It means wolf or hound, and you can't tell me that doesn't kind of look. Here's an ear, and here is the howling hound, right? Its snout coming up through here. This, if we go below it, is the Kuna Nadas, the champion of the wolves, or maybe the nephew of the wolves, because it takes the nephew wave sign and it takes the Kuna wave sign and it incorporates the two of them together in a way that makes one image win out over, larger than, bigger than the other, right? And it also has this interesting effect of movement, how they bounce off of one another and the directions that they go. And that comes in to mind when we look at the word katu, which means battle, right? And it's all kind of up here. And it goes down and then it goes up. And when it goes up, it taps itself twice. There's two T's. It goes boom, boom, and then it escapes. Well, then we have the Katabar, which is the chief in battle. What happens here is it comes through, right? It goes up, it battles itself, and it comes back, and then it escapes. So there's two battles here. There's this up and down, there's this back and forth, but then it doesn't stay stuck. It escapes. This is the chief in battle. So these are very forceful. It gives this idea or this feeling of very forceful wave fronts, very forceful activities, maybe sounds, maybe voltage. This is Vendubari, the fair-haired, and I know it looks a little fair-haired because I turned it yellow, but it's very active, is it not? This one is Kesani, and Kesani means the curly-haired one. Watch what it does. It goes like this down, and then it comes up, back, up, and over. It literally curls. It literally curls. And then we have this one that says one is blind, Dalagni. Okay. And what gets weird is almost like it looks like he's getting shot with an arrow, or it looks like something is being poked in the eye here. It's being crossed out. It can't move. It can't function. It can't see. Right. But this one is the Dirk Masak, the one with an elegant eye. And not only is it open and it's able to see from all these angles, it comes back in on itself. It's a complete closed circuit. Okay. We have bald short-haired one, the Melgni. It's almost everything is below this line, and there isn't a lot of sparking coming through like on the fair-haired one or the curly one that are up here. This one is short and bald. It doesn't really have a lot going on up at the top there. This is Gatglen, the wise and pure. And again, it's very open. And if you look, guys, it looks like a pyramid. Do you see that? If you turn it on an angle, it looks like a pyramid. And then we have the Lunadeka. Lu is the god of light, right? And Luga is one of the one of my favorite of all the gods. And he talks about, like, if these are light waves, if this is light wave refraction, if this is light coming down through like a lens flare or coming through the back of a camera, this is exactly how he responds. I mean, look at the way that light bounces off of anything. You've got refraction, you've got reflection, you've got attenuation, you all kinds incident rays, like all these different ways that light can interact with itself and surfaces. And that's what this is all describing here. Blue is the light purple. It's this space here. Light comes in and it shines on this space, and it shines on all this space, and it reflects it back into this other place. The deca is the 10, and it looks almost like a reflection, like almost, and I say deca the 10 because it's Latin, and some of these words are Latin. Those are the Latin inscription. And then we have the Arcadena, and that is the divine, or the heavens above, right? It's this one right here, the heavens above. Look, there's three-dimensionality to these. These are interacting with a three-dimensional space. Light waves, sound waves, words. I took the name Biviadana Smaki Mokoi, right? Son of the tribe Kanavali. And I turned it into a wave here. And when I turn it sideways like this, it looks like a flower unfurling. It looks like a leaf unfurling. Kind of, to me, looks like a ginseng leaf. But when I put it into the photo editor and I turned it negative so you could really see the details of it, it looked kind of like a samara, the little helicopter seats that come off like maple trees. So I put it in a reflection of itself, and it's almost it's a samara. And keep in mind that these are the Celtic tree runes. These are the patterns. We use trigonometry, we use geometry, we use calculus, we use all of these things to define, measure, and calculate everything in nature. So we don't just say, well, that's not calculus because it's a song. That's the next part I wanted to get to with you. It was that I came across a website called Roles World, ROELS World, Rose World, and he is all about the Coltrane Circle of Fifths and the uniqueness of it. And he has all of this information and all of these drawings. And I asked him a bunch of questions, and he hasn't gotten back to me yet. And I'm super excited to translate to you or talk to you about whatever comes of that conversation, because I am not a musician. And so I'm not familiar with a lot of these concepts or vocabulary of how these waveforms interact with each other, how the sacred geometry turns itself into music, how any of those relations actually function together. What of it was Rawls' work? What of it was known work that he was teaching us? So that's some clarification that he's going to be hopefully getting back with me on about this. But one of the things that was striking me so much is that music is written on a staff. There's 5 lines and 4 spaces, just like Fion's window. There's language or letters that are associated with sounds. The shape of the note is indicative of how long we hold the note, what that note does, how it functions. And when we line them all up together on the staff, it creates music. And what's happening is he's taking that music and he's turning it's being translated right into geometric forms around a unit circle, divided into the spaces of the notes, the musical notes, and then the octaves of. Go back to the very beginning when we were talking about octaves. 8 trees per level. 8 trees per level in the Irish society, the chieftains, the peasants, and the shrubs, right? So we talk about chords, discordant, harmonic, but in geometry, we also talk about chords and how those chords are interacting in circle spaces, right? We study the circle and all of these. All of this connections in the geometric circle are called chords. That's a chord, that's a chord, that's a chord, that's a chord. They're all chords. So we're using a lot of the same words, but that chord means string. And that string is, say, like catgut from a lyre, from a mandolin, from a modern day guitar, right? Those are the chords that you're playing, but you're playing chords in accordance with it being in harmony, right? Like, so even though they're different words, one comes from the word string and one comes from the word accord, and how do things get along together? They're all very musical. They all come from the same thing, and they all apply to a circle in the geometric forms. So I'm hoping to be able to show you more next time. Because it gets even weirder than this. I kind of feel like we've been working backwards in a way. Like we started off with the cairns, with Newgrange and Noth and Doth, and how were those possibly radios? Were those possibly mechanisms to be able to communicate with people at a far distance? Were they able to read the frequencies of the stars? Stars speak to us in radio frequencies. You know, a lot of people are coming out with these ancient alien things, and I am a firm believer that humans did this. I don't know if they were aliens or not, but I think that people did this. I think that we were smart enough then, and we're smart enough now to figure it out. We just need to give ourselves a little bit of credit. And I think that there's a lot of sensationalism going on with the possibility it could be this and it could be that and blah, blah, blah. But people aren't really getting down into the nitty gritty of it and actually doing the math. And that's what I'm doing for you here, making it legible, hopefully, and translatable to us in our modern vocabulary, our modern understanding. And at the same time, not sensationalizing it to make it something crazy and take away from the beauty and gift and profundity of what it actually is, because it is quite profound. And there are realistic mechanisms, there are realistic ways of being able to handle these things, maybe even understand better what they understood, and in turn understanding what's actually going on here better in the world. So I'm going to continue to work on this. I'm going to continue to research and make videos, and I'm also working on something else, so we'll get to that. We'll cross that bridge when we get there. But if you're still here, thank you for sharing this. Thank you for listening. Thank you for any input that you have, any links or more information. I greatly appreciate it. We're all on this journey together, and I'm just grateful that you're here. All right, thanks guys, have a wonderful day. We'll see you next time.